You only die once. That's the concept behind permadeath. If you're playing a game with permadeath, all of your progress is wiped away each time you die. Or if there's a party of characters and one of them dies, they're dead for the duration. This mirrors real life in a way that some people value quite a bit, so why not have it in more games? In fact, why not have it in every game? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx we ask the question, should single-player games offer a permadeath difficulty level? About a year ago, Hellblade's Senua's Sacrifice came out. It's a game that I've specifically pointed to as a very good experience, and more than a few have pointed at as a reason why mid-level games need to make a comeback. Now, it doesn't have exact permadeath per se. You have to die a few times in order to die. And this caused more than one controversy. First, it caused an argument as to what permadeath actually is, and it caused an argument over whether it should exist. Now, within the context of the game, dying causes the rot that she's experiencing, the corruption of her body, to spread further up her body. If it fully consumes her, she fully dies. Your save file is wiped, and that's that. So in its own way, the corruption is itself a health meter. The more of your body that is not corrupt, the healthier you are, and dying is more like getting hurt. If you look at it from this context, it is permadeath. You're certainly welcome to disagree with me. I'm not very emotionally attached to this position. I like that it takes a slightly wider view of the situation, but I don't really think that's the issue that matters most. The idea that people were angry that a game featured permadeath that was actually quite forgiving, considering it's kind of a pseudo-permadeath that requires you to widen your gaze in order to even actually call it permadeath, is pretty interesting to me. Now, keeping in mind that Hellblade's Senua's Sacrifice didn't exactly tell you it was going to have permadeath, but it also didn't exactly give you a traditional permadeath mechanic, I kind of understand why there was a controversy on account some people felt maybe fooled, but a lot of the argument I saw centered around if permadeath is even something that should be in games, and that's a weird one if you ask me. Again, Hellblade's Senua's Sacrifice is designed around a specific experience, and its death mechanic is 100% integral to that experience. It's intended to portray mental health in a specific way, and raising the stakes is vital to what it's saying as a game, or at least vital for the vision of the creators of the game, and therefore, if you believe in artistic expression, vital for the game. And I want to call attention to that specifically. The discussion we're having here is ultimately going to have to delve into the conflict between artistic expression and delivering a product that people want to buy. A couple of very popular games that give you the choice to include permadeath are the 2016 Doom reboot and Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. If you lose in either one of these games, either in Ultra Nightmare mode for Doom or Mein Leben in Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, that's it. These are games that do not have this as a default, and didn't actually have to mention it in their marketing materials at all. This obviously sets them apart from Hellblade's Senua's Sacrifice, as some people felt fooled into having to deal with permadeath in that game. Now, both of these games have a semblance of a narrative, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus a little bit more so than Doom, but these are games that overall you would look at as long enough that saves, continues, extra lives, checkpoints, all of that, it makes sense in Doom or Wolfenstein 2. Permadeath isn't in either of these games as a main mechanic, but as an option. As an option, it's there for you to demonstrate your skills in the game by giving you an incredibly high-stakes version of the game in which all of your progress, all of your time, all of your inventory, all of the things that you've done throughout the games just disappears if you die. Having that extra challenge adds a certain amount of replay value. In fact, for some people, a massive amount of replay value, as it causes you to essentially learn the game, learn every nook and cranny of every level, learn timing, learn enemy placements if they aren't random. But neither of these games were designed explicitly to have permadeath. Games that are designed designed in that way are more often than not designed around specific criteria. For instance, way back in the day when we had arcades, an arcade game was meant to get you to pump more money into it because that was the business model. If you died, let's say in Pac-Man or whatever, if you wanted to keep playing, you would have to put more money in it. Looking back on it, that's not really something to be that nostalgic about. It's kind of gross actually, but you know, a lot of stuff is when you look back on it. A lot of the reason I think that people maybe don't like permadeath is that when you don't have the choice in a game, permadeath doesn't work to actually teach you the game. It just works to punish you for not being good enough at it yet. Good games that feature permadeath have a loop that involves you learning about the game. You may not retain inventory, but sometimes you might unlock something, like the absolutely phenomenal Dead Cells. As you progress in that game, you unlock bonuses that you could get in a later playthrough. You could get really far, get a bonus you could activate, and then in dying you're not necessarily in despair. You might be able to activate that bonus much earlier in the game. This might set you up for a much better playthrough. Thus, permadeath can even become part of your strategy in Dead Cells, and I think this incentivizes you to continue playing even after you lose what you have. But then again, Dead Cells inventory is significantly more simplified than a lot of games that feature permadeath, and you're not really carrying enough stuff to be upset about losing at any given time, except for those weapons you craft. That can be frustrating. Dead Cells, however, is a full-on, no choice, this game features permadeath, period, game. The question at hand is whether or not we should feature permadeath as a difficulty level in games that maybe not necessarily were designed for permadeath. I think that Doom and Wolfenstein 2 are games that are fine to play with permadeath, although they weren't designed for it. But permadeath doesn't feel like a part of the game loop, it feels like something to avoid. You don't want to indulge in a loop of any sort, you want to stay alive and prolong the experience. On top of that, with a game like Dead Cells, where the levels rearrange themselves every single playthrough, it's only really things like enemy placement that could be changed around in a first-person shooter. At least a AAA one designed the same way Doom and Wolfenstein were. I mean, if you designed a first-person shooter that randomly generated its environments, sure, but you wouldn't be able to tell the kind of narrative that Doom and especially Wolfenstein do. Wolfenstein's narrative is, in a lot of areas, totally integrated into its gameplay. Yes, there are cutscenes, but a lot of it happens to you, and it's part of the game. So when we're augmenting permadeath onto a game that wasn't necessarily designed to do it, are we going to get the same kind of result as a game that designs itself around a permadeath mechanic? Of course not. Does that mean there's no reason to have permadeath in those games? Well, no. I'm sure it's not really actually that hard to add permadeath to a game. It's certainly harder to design around permadeath and try to make it feel like a part of the experience in a way that loops you back around and doesn't frustrate you too badly. I mean, it is always frustrating, but regardless, it's not a difficult thing to put into a game. It's just ending the game and deleting the save file, or ending the game and writing that you can't continue in the save file. There's no right or wrong answer to should a game have permadeath as its main experience. Again, it loops back to artistic expression. The people making the game are ultimately the authority on the game. Their decisions are what is best for the game, at least according to their artistic vision. That doesn't mean it'll sell well, but if they want the game to have permadeath and permadeath only, that's the right choice for their artistic vision. If you make a game that only does permadeath, though, you're going to alienate at least some people, and there are going to be people that won't buy your game at all. This leaves us with the idea of permadeath as an option. We went over the two types of ways that could be used, either on a game that's designed around permadeath or not, but I think that this is ultimately the way to go if you aren't willing to commit to full-on artistic vision. If you have to worry about some degree of sales, and you do, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how big you are, you cannot pretend that games are not at the mercy of the dollar. So if you have to worry about that, yes, you do. Like I said, you do. You have to think, well, do I want to try to sell this game as an artistic vision, or do I want to give people the choice? Ultimately, the way things work today, choice is probably the better option. And this probably sounds harsh, but most developers don't have the luxury of just saying, heck with the market. You see, there's people who like permadeath. They like the challenge, They like the idea that things have consequences, dire consequences, and that brings them further into a game. There's also people who are there for the story, or perhaps don't have the time or ability to quote-unquote get good. More adults play games now than pretty much ever before, and adults have to pay rent or a mortgage, and that means they have to work, and they face enough consequences in their life based on their choices that they don't want that in a video game, an escape from all of that. So, should single-player games offer a permadeath difficulty? Absolutely. The more choice, the better. If having your bad decisions stick to you for hours and hours and hours in a game gets you further into the game, you should be allowed to do it. Now, obviously, I'm not saying it should be mandatory that any developer includes the option, but I think it's probably fun for a lot of people, so developers should at least consider it. What's your opinion on permadeath? Leave us a comment, and if you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.